for Burp. I mean, so thank you and cheers. Happy 2016, everyone.
Happy 2016. Right. Off to a good start. Thank you. My name is David Brown. I'm a senior security engineer at Security Innovation. What that means is that I am a distant cousin of you guys. I work for Security Innovation, which I know at least a few of you are aware of. We have an office in Boston, an office in Seattle. I work in the engineer group here in the Seattle office. So me and about, I think, 25 now other engineers, we take turns taking apart applications from a security perspective, finding vulnerabilities for clients. It's really interesting work and very varied work. Pretty much test anything that you can come up with. We've done embedded systems and large-scale web applications. I personally pen tested a crypto system used by probably millions of people, so we can scale up and down. We also have the Boston side of the company. They write the Team Academy, Team Mentor, and Team Professor suites. It's a lot of guidance. Some of it is computer-based, a lot of videos, some very nice. Actually, has anyone gotten an hour of code before from code.org? No. Okay.
Use that with teaching.
Yeah, it's a tool to teach little kids how to program, and it's iterative. So you start out with very simple concepts and they get more and more complex, but the actual UI is interactive and you can affect the way it works itself. We have some similar products for security. So there will actually be an iframe in the page that says, here's some vulnerable code, fix it. And it'll get more and more complex as you go along. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that? Awesome. I'm going to take food in your mouth. So if anybody did bring a laptop or a tablet and they wanted to kind of play along, I have some known vulnerable websites. I mentioned earlier we do training. We also have a suite of applications that we use for instructor-led training. So groups of people get together and then all pen test together as a group one particular application using a lot of times Burp, which we'll talk about today. And then walk around and help people learn as they do it. The Spacebin link has all three vulnerable sites up right now. They'll be up through the end of tomorrow, I believe. And also some links to some resources that I'll be talking about. Yeah. So I guess the first question, has anybody here used Burp before? Or the Burp suite? Okay. And has anybody used a proxy to intercept HTTP traffic? Okay, good. Yeah, so the general idea is with any intercepting proxy, we want to see what a request or response looks like going from a client to a server, or from a server to a server, or from a mobile app to a client. It can really be anything, but Burp is built for intercepting HTTP requests in particular. So there are such things as TCP proxies at a lower level. Burp does not do that. It was built by people like me, security engineers who happen to be lazy sometimes, for other lazy security engineers. Essentially, as you guys all know, testing can get really tedious. Automating things is one way to get rid of the tedium, but you give up things when you automate stuff. You've got control over the tests you can write, how those tests work. So Burp tries to hit this really difficult line in between automation and manual testing. It automates things that aren't fun to do, but is so configurable and so extendable that you can still configure things or set up tests in basically arbitrary ways so you can maintain control over the flow of them. Also, if you happen to have a program, which I assume a subset of the people in this room do, it's extensible, they have open APIs. Has anybody here used Metasploit before, out of curiosity? Okay. Couple hands. So Metasploit is an automated pen testing framework, and it is on the other end of the spectrum. It automates all the things from one end to the other. You essentially click buttons and own websites, and it does work or does not work, and then if it doesn't work, you're kind of left with tests that didn't work. I mentioned that it's automated in quotations. What is it not? It is not open source. Although there are open APIs and you can write extensions for it, it does cost $350 per user per year, which in the grand scheme of things is a lot cheaper than almost all other testing tools out there. If my employer didn't pay for it, I would pay for it. That's how much I like it. So, It's not always entirely intuitive, thus this talk. For example, these are all different attack types for one particular tool in the Burp suite, because it is a suite of tools. Sniper, battering ram, pitchfork, and cluster bomb. And honestly, I had to look these up every single time. I know that you probably want sniper most of the time, and then the others, go look it up on their documentation. They could have picked better names, but I think they just like ingrained them in at this point. It's been too long, and they're not going to change it. And then we'll talk a little bit about risk as well. Burp is really powerful, and you can take down services without even intending to. And maybe we'll talk about some specific instances of that. Any questions so far?
Do you test app stability?
The testing framework. So am I testing the app stability of Burp, or?
I'm sorry, Burp. If I say I'm developing a product and I'm going to apply Burp, will Burp tell me if I can crash it?
Sure. In fact, if you have some context about the application, if you know maybe this type of request takes more resources than this other type of request, what happens when I scale up requests to this arbitrary number per second? What happens if I change a single variable in that request? What happens if I intentionally code the test such that I am a naive developer and I'm not, round robining through the load balancer, and instead of just hitting one machine? Yeah, all those things. There are tools out there that are specifically built to brute force applications. One of our colleagues at SI actually wrote one called Black Mamba, and its sole purpose in life is to just take something down to generate arbitrary number of requests. Burp isn't really built for that, but it can do that. So, you guys are the beneficiaries of me giving this talk before giving it to all of you. The last time it turned out a little bit more boring than I wanted it to be. So we're going to skip this slide and all of the other slides that came after this. And instead, we're just going to start doing some demos. Yeah, with that being said, I'll go ahead and just take you on a kind of a high-level tour of the tool. And we will talk in detail. There are some more slides. But please do ask questions as they come up. I mentioned that this tool isn't always intuitive. I may be making some assumptions that are incorrect about just how not intuitive it is. So this is the professional version of the suite. It looks exactly the same as the free version, except the professional version has a couple of menu options ungrayed out, essentially. For example, if we look at the proxy history, so this would be all the requests and responses that Burp has seen between two entities that we are intercepting. There's a really nice filter by search term. You can arbitrarily search through any request or response, header, body, URI, doesn't matter. You can even pass them to really nice regex. It has a really nice regex parser. You can negate it with a single checkbox, which is really nice. Instead of trying to remember how do you negate things in regex. This is grayed out in the free version. Like, this is probably the killer feature for me. It turns out being able to see all the requests when you have like 3,500 is nice, but not always sufficient. There's not a whole lot going on in the top here. Essentially, most, if not all, of the functionality in the tool is going to be spread across these top-level tabs. As I mentioned, it's a proxy along with a suite of other tools. Most of these are going to be relatively self-explanatory. Some of them you can dive pretty deep. In fact, you could probably spend a week getting good at a single one of these tabs if you were to so choose to do that. To answer the question about kind of stress testing or looking at the actual implemented availability of the site, Intruder is really nice. We'll talk about that a little bit. Repeater is going to be heavily used. You can send anything in the suite, any request to the repeater, and then manipulate it, and then just keep iterating through different versions of that request. This is kind of where the manual part comes in. Intruder is certainly an automated portion. Spider obviously is automated. But that being said, there's also a lot hidden under these tabs. For example, a spider is a spider. It's going to crawl a website or a service and try to find resources. If it finds a link to something, it will go download that. If there are links in that thing, it will go download those links. There's a big button that says it's paused. We can click that and unpause it. But without going through all of these other options, we don't actually know exactly what it's about to do. So kind of an example of Burp providing functionality in an easy to get to way, but also having a lot of flexibility. Any questions now?
So with like an option like that, is there a way to save a profile you want to execute in that tab?
Yes. Also a paid version, or a paid feature. Burp has a distinction between the state of the entire suite, saving and restoring the state of, so saying, oh, I'm done for the day, I'm going to save state, persist as a disk, and go home, and then restoring that to settings. And you'll notice that you can individually configure each of the tools in the suite, record those settings, and then load them individually later. When you save state, you're actually given the option which of the tools you want to save the state or configuration of. If you have the paid version, if not, you have to do it individually. But yes, for the intruder in particular, we can take a look at, here. So we can save an attack configuration, load attack configuration, even copy with or without payload positions. We'll talk about payload positions in a little bit. But yeah, the answer is yes.
I have a question. Can you do fuzzing, and can you do smart fuzzing? Two-part question.
Yes.
Smart by smart, I mean, let's say if I was going to, if you're asking XML, for example, you're sending XML as part of the request. Can you basically say, well, given the constraint that it's still well-formed XML, then fuzz that?
Yes.
Right, cool.
We'll chat about that in a little bit. Sequencer we'll chat about in a second. Intruder really requires you to, here's an example, request example. What was that? Can everybody read this or mostly read it? I can make it over here. Let's see. That's nicer. Let's see. So you can pick arbitrary places in a request and then fuzz that with arbitrary values, and then those values can iterate on arbitrary rules.
And do you record all the transactions so that if you hit something which is especially significant from a security point of view, you know exactly what, this I can crash it with this?
Yes, and they take it a step further. You can define regex to determine whether an individual test instance is pass or fail for each intruder payload or configuration. Let's see. I'll let you read. That's as big as it gets. Okay, so let's hop back to the slides. I don't remember where we left off exactly. That guy. Okay, so for the slides from here on out, we'll be iterating through the tabs. So we're just going to go left to right from, imagine this bottom row on the far left side. We're kind of crushed now. But through the left and then up to intruder and across to the right. So for the target tab, two main things you need to know about it. The sitemap is going to keep a list of every host or unique entity that it comes across. So if you send lots of requests and they're all the same host, there'll only be one host in the sitemap. But if you're spidering and that spiders are branching across lots of hosts, they'll all be in the sitemap as well. It's basically a canonical place to find out every resource, or sorry, every host or endpoint that Burp has found for a given session. It's not all, there's no regex to search through it, unfortunately, like the proxy history. So if you have a few hundred, sometimes you have to scroll for a bit to find the host that's interesting to you. Scope, I didn't know about this for the first year of using the tool. It's also pretty important. The idea is that every other tool in the suite will constrain or allow you to constrain your test cases to things that are in or out of scope. So you can formally define this is out of scope always, or this is in scope always, or some combination of the two. And that scope can be not just a host, but a URI pattern. It can be anything with this variable in it. But typically you're saying, I want this host to be in scope and then nothing else. And then you know that when you run the spider and you tell spider only spider things in scope, you're not going to start branching off to other things in the internet or making some developer sysadmin sad. Proxy is pretty straightforward. Two things you should probably know about the proxy. There are two primary configurations of the proxy. One is strict interception. So if you send a request from a browser, Burp will grab it and then just hold it in a queue and not allow it to go to the server until you explicitly click forward or until you change something in it and then click forward. It is nice. Every once in a while, there will be something, value will get munged on the way to the server, or you just want to capture it before anything happens to it. And then you can also do it for responses as well. You can say, I want all responses from this host to be captured in this intercepting tool before it gets to the client. So then you can tamper with data coming back from the server, because it turns out clients trust servers all the time when they should not. Let's see. Oh, and then history. I called this the glue holding the suite together. It's going to be where you spend most of your time as a tester. Every request that you send or receive that is being intercepted will show up here. Every request. Another fun fact, just recently I tested a target, made 375 requests to their server before I clicked anything. So this is just me loading the page. So there's a lot of stuff to look at in the history tab. Great for questions. That's what I said too. And then we'll cover two options for the proxy. There are a lot more. The proxy is another infinitely configurable portion of the suite, but two important ones. CA certificates. Is anybody here familiar with PKI or CAs or certificate infrastructure? Okay. The general idea is when you visit a site and it's secured, that security relies on the integrity of the certificate. And a certificate possibly identifies the server or service that you're connecting to. Because Burp is breaking that chain, browsers will just complain. If a service or a mobile application is built intelligently, it will also complain, but not usually. To get around that, Burp generates its own CA certificate. And so then you have to have that certificate trusted by whatever it is that you're testing. So if it's a browser, you need to add that certificate to the browser's trust store. If it's a mobile application, you have to import that certificate into the phone or tablet. And then any traffic back and forth will be able to be captured by Burp. Most things are protected by TLS, not SSL these days, and so this is kind of a necessary evil. Occasionally I run across things like configurations for highly secured applications that even this isn't sufficient for, and then it gets complicated. Just be aware of that as fact. Match and replace is probably the most overlooked tool, and because of that, maybe it's my favorite. I love telling people about it, even seasoned security engineers that haven't really used it. It seems pretty straightforward at first. You're able to take any arbitrary piece of a request or response and then replace it with any arbitrary other thing in that request or response while it's being intercepted. I want to go more around too. So let's capture some stuff. We are now proxying through Burp. I'm just going to reload the home page. And done. Almost. Stinking. Oh, look. Lesson number 1. If your request isn't responding, it's because it got intercepted. I reset all the settings in the suite earlier and forgot that by default, intercept is on. So here's the request. This is the very initial request. You can see there's a GET request for Mercury Retail, which is the index page for the site. We can see all the request headers. And Burp is just going to hold this for us until we do anything with it. We can either drop it altogether, in which case, like maybe let's see what the client does if it just never gets a response from the server. Sometimes that breaks things. We can also define an action. We have a lot of options here. We can send this request to any other tool before it ever makes it to the server. In this case, though, we're going to go ahead and just uncheck intercept. So now it's off. And we'll notice our target tab turned red. It wants to tell us something. And here's the sitemap I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. Burp will helpfully tell you things that it finds as well. We'll talk about scanning in just a second. So here's all the things that Burp has seen so far, all the resources for the page. Every single resource it finds, it will add here. And then it will also, by default, passively scan that resource for any vulnerabilities. Kind of low-hanging fruit. Generally nothing severe, but enough for you to get to go write a report and send it to somebody and have to fix it. I think the important part here, though, is scope. We don't have anything in scope. There's a really easy way to fix that. We know that this particular site is what we want in scope. Right-click, add a scope, and done. Now, any other tool that is configured to use the scope will honor it. Look at our history tab under the proxy, and we have one request. Let's see, make this a little bit bigger. So now we see the request. This is the exact same request we saw earlier that had been captured and held, but instead, in addition to, we can also see the response. This looks like a pretty straightforward HTML document. There weren't any 302 redirects, nothing got downloaded after this, but we can peruse full content of this. We can also render it in a little mini browser. Sometimes, though, we need to see things in the actual browser. So you guys know this, maybe the actual subversion of the subversion of the browser. In that case, we can hop over here and say show response browser. It will give us a little link, copy that, go back to the browser, and it will repeat that exact same request on behalf of us through Burp. But instead, this time, it's the same page. It'll render it in the browser rather than a little mini rendering engine. Let's play around some more. So let's try to log in. Oliver X. Does not work. Check someone else. Fuzzy kittens. That shouldn't work either. Doesn't. But let's go back to Burp and see what that looks like so far. So I would expect to see 2 requests, but instead we see 4 additional requests. So we can see what's going on here behavior-wise. First request is a post rather than a get. So we're going to have post body down here. You can see the credentials that we submitted earlier. So actually, that's a good question. One of the columns here is whether or not this was over SSL or TLS or not. And yeah, you're right, it's not. That's plain text. So that's problematic. That would be a finding for me. I'd start working on documenting that. We look at the response. 302 redirect. Okay, that explains why we had an additional request generated for that one login attempt. And we got a message back. Login failed. I don't know why the message is being sent as part of the or the URI. That's kind of weird. But the response, it just goes back to the home page. So this is an example of kind of working through a request and response cycle in the browser, actually looking at it in Burp. Any questions about this? I have curiosity. So far, does this look useful to you guys at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. It's so much better without all the boring slides. That's the way to go. Okay, spider. I mentioned what the spider does. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There are lots of other spiders on the internet. This is Burp's. Fun fact, it auto-populates with requests. So let's go look at that actually real quick. Go to the spider tab, and we'll notice the spider's pause is not doing anything, but it's already queued up 28 requests. That means that it saw 28 references to other resources that are branching off of the 2 pages that we've loaded so far. And it is just ready to go and download all those resources and then look for more. So if we unpause this, it immediately started iterating through everything they could find. It eventually made 51 requests, and it stopped at 4. These requests require credentials. So you can either provide them in the tool here manually, or you can configure sets of credentials in the spider configuration. So form submission, you can find regex, If the request looks like this, then provide these credentials. If it has this value in a request parameter, then provide these credentials, etc. We're just going to skip these for now. And now if we go back to our sitemap, oops, it still wants more credentials. I saw CVV in there somewhere. Interesting. If we go to target sitemap, now we can see it populated a lot of stuff. Oh, and look, we have other hosts. Now we got GitHub and jQuery, Sizzle.js. Does anybody have a idea of why these are showing up in the sitemap?
It's pretty resource in HTML.
The developers hot link these. So they are pulling either JavaScript or style sheets or some other framework directly from a repository somewhere. People do that over plain text. You can tamper with those JavaScript resources on the way in and then wreak havoc in the client. Yeah, you'll frequently see things. This is why it's important to define the scope. And actually, let's go check and see if we define the scope in Spire. Let's see. There we go. Use suite scope or use custom scope. But yeah, it just inherits suite scope. It's not uncommon for this to hit thousands of requests for this Spire. Oh, and then this is going to be one of the tools that can cause problems unintentionally. The example, the delete everything button that ended up in the admin console for some reason, that happens. And if you think about it, if Aspire is iterating for every single request it can possibly make, and then it hits that delete everything button and makes that request, and things disappear, if you're not in an environment where you anticipate that, that's pretty problematic. I can speak from experience. That it turns out the HTTP delete verb, there are still servers in the world that will honor that delete verb, even if you submit it against /webroot. I got to talk to a sysadmin who said, it just went away, the whole site's gone.
Yeah, you're supposed to say, I've heard that this can happen.
It's probably true. Yeah. They had a backup, so that's what I can talk about. Yeah, just to reiterate, do be careful with the tool. It is powerful. Live scanning. So I mentioned that most of what Burp does is manual. There are things that you can do that are automated. Passive scanning is one. You saw earlier, it was calling out a couple of low-hanging fruit because it just was passively looking at traffic back and forth, like, oh, that looks problematic, you should check that out. Active scanning will actually send malicious packets to a service. It will send something, look at the response, iterate it, send that, look for response, and these are basically pre-programmed sets of things that it's going to look for. Usually it provides more interesting findings. I almost never use it. I don't like the lack of control I have over it. If I do need to set up something automated, then I'll use some of the other tools in the suite to set up an automated tool with some context to the thing that I'm testing. But it's certainly an option if you have a throwaway environment, a throwaway instance of an application. By all means, fire the active scanner out and see what it finds.
So are you saying that it might bring your system down or deplete, or diminish the
all of you,
or okay, or is it just too hard for you to try to interpret what it's feeding back to you?
So the answer is the former. The actual results from the scanner are very easy to read. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to stop the spider, so it stops doing that. Let's see, scanner.
It's just a bit destructive, not beyond your control.
Correct.
Okay.
And it intentionally tries not to be too destructive. It just turns out a lot of services are really, really brittle. If you send something that does not anticipate in some weird corner case, the whole thing will come down. It's enough of a risk that I generally just don't bother unless there's a specific reason for it. If we go over here though, right click, actively scan this host, that's a manual way to trigger the active scan. It'll ask us some questions about things that we want to leave out of scope. So do we want to test things with no parameters? Do we want to send requests to the same duplicate URL and parameter? Probably not. Remove images, things like that. And then it will actually say, here's all the things that I'm going to send. Are you sure you want me to send, or you want me to test these specific endpoints? Okay. And off it goes. So here's the queue. It has 10 threads that are running right now. All the things that it is looking at. Again, over here. And if we look at what it's actually trying to find, there's a list under issue definitions. So this actually says, I'm looking for LDAP injection, server-side JavaScript code injection, SSL and SSI, server-side include injection.
Cross-site script.
Yeah, or something. If you get a clean bill of health from this tool, that does not mean those problems don't exist. It just means that they passed kind of a bar.
Who uses JavaScript on the server? Never mind.
Oh, believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this work. Look at the results here. The results, for some reason, go back into sitemap. A little weird. And usually there's another column on the right that we can't see because the screen got all compressed. Oh, actually, I pulled it out here. So we can step through and look at the results for each one of these resources. It is hierarchical. Did I say that correct? Get that right. Yeah, you can see there's file upload functionality. This is an informational finding. You as a tester probably want to see what happens when you send files that it doesn't expect. It has found 9 instances of clear text submission of passwords. And it's still ticking up. So kind of an example of what using active scanning looks like.
So those signatures are updated frequently and stuff?
Yes. They probably have a sub-release every month or so. And these definitions get pretty well maintained. I haven't talked about extensions, but there's an entire community of people that are writing plugins for it as well. There's even plugins just to extend the number of things that the scanner looks for. They're all open source, by the way. So Intruder, this guy made the cut just because he's so ridiculous. I mentioned it's the most powerful. You can really look for anything with the Intruder. I'll give one example. So we'll go back to the login page. One of my favorite things to look for is account enumeration. Just the ability to say this account does or does not exist in this system, and then can I find some metadata about each of those accounts? It's not something that is typically protected against unless somebody's already found that they're vulnerable to it and then they address it. But let's go ahead and generate a request, a login request. So we'll say login request. Oops. Go hop over to our tool. Back to our history. That's where everything's going to show up. So here's our most recent login request. We can confirm it's the right one. There's our username and password. I think this will answer your question from earlier. So we're going to right click and send this over to Intruder, or hit Control-I, if you prefer. We'll see that the host and the port are going to populate here. We can also pick HTTPS or not. So you can do some things like switch around 443 and 80. Like, will it receive encrypted requests on 80? Look for funny behavior there. We confirm this is the target. This is where it gets interesting. If we go over to Payload Positions, this is going to be the exact copy of the request. Burp tried to infer what I'm interested in here. Am I interested in the session IDs here? Or am I interested in the login credentials? Essentially, each one of these yellow blocks is going to get replaced with something. In this case, I'm going to clear them out. And I'm going to just recreate those markers just for the login and, username and password, the actual values there. So we'll add a marker here, add a marker here. I mentioned the attack types are non-intuitive. Sniper is going to, actually, let's remove this guy. Sniper is going to replace one payload position with a list of things that we provide. That's targeted on one specific position. So once I pick my position, I'll go over to payloads. And this is where we define what we want to actually get stuck into that little yellow block every single time the request is issued. This is very, very configurable, but we're going to pair Burp with another great set of tools, or just lists, called sec lists. Has anybody heard of Daniel Meisler before? Pretty well-respected security researcher. He did what I had been talking about doing for 2 years, and then just started putting together a canonical list of every security-related list of things that he could find. So it's up to 400 megs worth of usernames and passwords and SQL injection, indicators, lots and lots of good stuff. It's on GitHub, also free. So we're going to pull from that. Here, we're going to hop over. So I have cyclists already downloaded into usernames, hop in names, and I'm just going to randomly pick one of these. Top 1,000 USA male names English.text. Once I load this up, this guy's going to be populated with all the top 1,000 US male names in English. We could do other things. We could define, recursive regex, illegal Unicode characters, arbitrary character blocks. We could just brute force it with, A to Z. But in this case, we're just going to pull from a list. We'd also do fun things like URL encode the payload before we send it. You can add arbitrary rules. Match and replace again, add a suffix to something, hash something, before it gets sent, or base64 encode it, really whatever you want. And then options, I'm just talking about a couple of important ones: number of threads, and how long you wait between failures. This is pretty important, or you can just throttle it, but Intruder will generate a lot of requests. It will swamp pretty much any service you pointed at if you don't take measures to prevent that. In this case, I know the host can handle it, so I'll just leave it at 5 threads. And then there's another important thing at the very bottom here: follow redirections. So occasionally, if you're sending a request, it will try to redirect you to something that is not in scope. You need to tell the trigger what to do about that, or else you're going to start just wandering around the internet sending malicious requests, which I can also attest is not good.
You've heard.
I've heard. I may or may not be the person responsible for getting our office banned from Google DNS.
I think you should try innuendo, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, actually, we recently got unblacklisted, which I was asked to not touch again.
Their security got a little better then.
I broke their international handling of DNS names. It's actually a long, fun story. Maybe later.
No, that's fine.
If you know how many DNS requests it takes to make 20 megs per second of sustained DNS traffic, it's a lot of requests for about a day. So generally, you always only want to follow redirections in scope. Looping back to Burp. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just fire off this payload here, or attack, so we can see what this looks like. I'll make that bigger. So you'll see it did follow a redirect each time. Kind of a handy clue to see whether or not the result of these requests is different. You can look at their length. So I'm sorting from top to bottom and bottom to top. These are all exactly the same responses. So this particular attack wasn't very fruitful, but if, for example, David had a valid username and the application was not behaving and returning generic error messages on positive or negative conditions for the login attempt, it would show up here. Another interesting thing is the length of time for the request. I don't have that column highlighted here, but if a request takes 210 microseconds longer to respond than all the others, and you can repeat that over and over again, that's a side channel attack. You know that there's something interesting about that request, and maybe that account exists because the SQL query is taking longer to come back on the back end than otherwise. You can see all the metadata associated with the attack on these options here. So any questions about the intruder? Kind of a Swiss Army knife. Okay, moving along. Moving along. Demo time, we just did that, so. Repeater, I mentioned earlier, there are automated scanners. Almost everything I find that's really interesting that clients could want to learn about, they come out of the repeater for manually iterating through things with the benefit of all of the hard parts of manually repeating things and maintaining encoding and structure and all of that taken care of by Burp. If you can't read, this says, I learned Burp Suite, so I guess you can say I'm an InfoSec Pro. Sequencer, it does one thing. It determines how much entropy a given object has, or a string, by collecting 20,000 of them and then performing statistical analysis against that set. If you are looking at session identifiers, if a session token only has 8 bits of entropy, that's problematic. It's very guessable. Almost all frameworks now address this problem. I don't use sequencer as much as I did even 3 years ago. Or at least it's not as fruitful as it was at least 3 years ago. But if you want to know what the entropy of something is, sequencer will tell you, and it's in the free version as well. And decoder. So the decoder is really nice. It is kind of clunky. I don't know why it's still so bad, but you can take anything in any request or response or any other part of the suite, and I'm going to bring it encoded here. Let's go to our history. So I'll just grab this session identifier. Right click, send to decoder, and then once here, you can pretty much arbitrarily, in a chain of encodings and decodings, manipulate what that property looks like. So we can, oops, get over. We can base 64 encode it. So now we have a little base 64 string. We can encode it again as X. That's the same thing. Let's try gzip and decode that as binary. Pretty much anything you need. This is nice sometimes if you have something that looks like base 64, but you're not positive. You can just enter the decoder and decode it and see what it looks like. And compare. This is probably the one tool I just have not used in the suite that much. I used it probably the first time 2 months ago, and I haven't used it since. But you can take anything, any 2 things in the suite and then compare them to each other. I suppose if you had responses that were extremely similar and you just wanted to look at the nuance between them, you could do that. And extender. This is where a lot of the meat and potatoes of the suite is right now. Burp itself, besides like updating signatures and definitions and things like that, it's a pretty static application. It hasn't changed a whole lot in the 3.5 years I've been using it heavily. But the new APIs that were released about 1.5 years ago have really developed a community of contributors. So a lot of people are writing a lot of extensions for the suite that make it do a lot of really neat things. They're almost all free, which is great, and the source is available. Some ones that I like, Logger++, this is especially nice in the free version of the suite because you can very easily generate exports in CSV or JSON, I believe, every request and response in the suite. So creating snapshots if you don't have the ability to save state for the suite. JSON decoder, because everything is JSON now. Being able to encode and decode in and out of that is nice. Burp doesn't give it to you out of the box. Browser repeater. This might be nice for you guys. You can define specific browser signatures or definitions or versions, and essentially have a list of browsers that are installed outside the suite. And you say, I want to see the response from this request in all of these browsers, all these versions of those browsers. Headers analyzer. The reason I call that out is because headers don't get a lot of attention from a security perspective, and there's still a lot of problems with them. And then Lizzler. Does anybody here use or test SOAP services or manage SOAP services? At least one couple. SOAP UI core, or they basically took SOAP UI, ripped out the UI, and then just stuck the core piece as a Burp extension, which is really nice when you think about what you can do with like SOAP UI and Intruder put together. It handles all the structure of the SOAP requests and responses and everything. I think I'm out of time. I've chatted about a few of these things. I don't think any of that is particularly important. Being able to save state of the suite is really, really nice. Combined with the ability to search requests and responses in the proxy history is nice enough to be worth right a few bucks. So I think that's a big difference between pro and free. Yeah, and I have these links in the slides, obviously, but also in the Basebin link I had up earlier. I think I still have 5 minutes technically, but as long as you guys have questions, I'll stand here and answer them until somebody kicks me out. So, yeah, what questions do you have? Did I cover anything that seems like the tool might be good at, would be useful for you, but or that I didn't cover.
How about, since we might not know what you didn't cover?
I know.
Yeah. What, if you had to say something you think the tool's missing, what would that be?
That's an interesting question. To answer that question, let's go hop over and look at the extension list. So Extender has its own tab. If we hop over to the, and you can sideload extensions. If you download them off GitHub or wherever, you're at your own, you can just arbitrarily install and remove them. But they do have a list of formally published extensions that are included in or available in the suite. Kind of to answer your question, most of the stuff you see here is going to be really specific to like one person's use case. So say Faraday, I believe this is a testing framework. Yeah, so Faraday Integrated Penetration Test Environment. I've never used it, I've never seen anybody use it, but for those like 30 people that do use it, this is really, really nice. And I'd say if you are comfortable coding in Python or Java or Jython, which is a thing, or Ruby, you can arbitrarily build your own extension that will leverage everything in here, but for your specific use cases. Right now, the tool is pretty monolithic, I guess is the right word. It doesn't do a lot of connecting to other things outside of itself, which is nice to have when you're integrating with build process, or when you want to collaborate on something, or when you want to be able to take a raw stream of requests from some other testing framework, drop them into the tool, do stuff with them, and then spit them back out in a chain of test frameworks or environments. It doesn't really do a lot of that right now. As I mentioned, it was built for security engineers, by security engineers. It's becoming more popular with developers. Actually, another question, has anybody here used Fiddler?
Yeah.
Okay, it's basically Fiddler on steroids. I have found one thing that Fiddler can do that's better than Burp. It turns out if you need to request, or need to intercept and manipulate very, very low-level HTTP requests that are generated by something like Windows itself that does not honor any system proxies, Fiddler is the way to go. But other than that, Burp kind of outshines it in every way.
If you bring Burp into your organization and you don't want people inside your organization to take down websites over the web, or do
all
something.
Those things, yeah. Get your box banned from Google.
Stuff like that, yeah. How do you sort of phase, what they can do to start? How do you keep an eye on them? How do you, because I'm sort of thinking this is a marvelous hacking tool.
Yeah.
So internal controls on your hackers. Okay, how do you do
testers,
it?
or
Whatever you want to call them.
What did your company do to you, hypothetically?
If it's an if you got banned from Google, hypothetically.
I think they were more upset when I lost the bathroom key. No, we have an alternate DNS provider, luckily. But the answer to the question is, at least in our office, and I think this is a partial answer to your question, we all trust each other to not make huge mistakes, and when they do happen, it's there's kind of an unwritten understanding that this is a powerful tool and you can make mistakes with it, even if you're being careful. I don't think I have a great answer to your question. I think the reality is that anyone with the proclivity could go download this and start playing with things right now on anybody's internet. Or if you were on that internet, you can start playing around, and that's true for the public web as well. There's a motto in the security industry, everything is broken. And it's funny for like a year, and then it gets really sad. And then if you make it through like the third year, then it's kind of funny again. But there's nothing that is in the tool that would allow you to define things that you can or cannot do with it. And other than things like infrastructural network segmentation, if you have things that are business critical or extremely important to not go down, to just have them isolated from the corporate internet. And I think probably another good answer to your question is having good segregated test environments. So having a clear, dev environment, test environment, QA environment, pre-prod, prod, and that way you can give somebody this tool and say, don't touch those other environments, like this tool is only to be used in this environment, because if you blow it away, we can restore it tomorrow or tonight or automatically. Does that partially answer your question? Does anybody else have any good ideas?
Do you think maybe the extenders could be used to change how the tools work, or the extensions work as their own little tab or whatever?
A little of both. The extensions have a lot of reach into the suite itself, but I don't know off the top of my head, and my hunch is no. I don't think that they can restrict functionality of the existing tools. I think that they can augment them.
Almost like you need like a group policy editor or something like that.
It sounds like putting it on just a environment, different environments, probably the best way to do this. It sounds like to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is trust in the testing or the testers as well.
So does the Chinese military use it? That would be really your recommendation.
I assume so.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything they don't use. In the original set of slides, I mentioned the boring set, that it is a very well-respected tool. I have a whole slide just on that, actually. But there aren't a lot of tools out there that are just categorically used across the industry. Portswigger, which is the name of the company that writes Burp, which is ridiculous. Like they've really done well for themselves by building this tool to do all the things that aren't fun to do for you.
So how does this compare against some of the open source solutions, Zap or Wapiti or
like OpenVAS or Nikto? Yeah, there are an arbitrary number of scanning tools out there, but and I guess in one aspect, the Active Scanner and Passive Scanner are in that same category of tool. Essentially, everything else about the suite is a different type of thing. It only automates stuff to allow you to manually test things quickly, basically. Cool.
So are there any controls on who purchases it?
No. There are changes being made right now at the federal level, or that have been drafted, that would change rules about who and how and where you can sell this type of software to. So for example, if Portswigger tried to sell this in Europe, they would have to get approval from the federal government first. If I find an interesting vulnerability with it, I cannot inform anybody of that until I disclose to the government as well. So things like that are in the works, but right now, this is not considered export controlled. It can be sold anywhere to anybody. And as I mentioned, the paid version really just makes your life easier. All of the core functionality is present in the free version as well.
So the Chinese military's got to get it on this quickly.
Hey guys, the Chinese military. All the militaries.
One of the things I've seen with this, I do a lot of IPS, IDS firewalls, is there are a lot of IPS and IDSs now that pick up the signatures on these type of things, including Qualys and a lot of those other scanners, and actually will tell you that it's going on. Because one of the fall downs that happens on this is people tend to click on the defaults. And if you click on the buttons and you run the way they're set up, it's always the same sequence. So a smart firewall or smart IPS will actually pick that sequence up and tell you somebody just ran a Zap proxy scan, somebody just ran a Qualys scan. It'll actually alert you that that's happening right now. So instead of you having to dig through all these logs from the security perspective and try to figure out who did all of these things, most of the intelligent firewalls or log collection units in those will actually pick up the fact and it will report, this is what happened. So when it comes to doing the internal limits, running that on the inside is something that I did all the time, because I don't trust the inside or the outside. And I know that people can carry this in on a USB stick. So I'm gonna run it on both sides. And if somebody triggers it, I'm gonna make a phone call. I'm gonna check their machine. I'm gonna see if it's in the inventory. But those are things that you have to use to your advantage. Otherwise, log collection and looking at it manually, you'll go nuts, because all of a sudden you'll just get flooded with all this activity, and it's like, what the hell happened?
So if you're checking for internal, when you say the log, then you know who's supposed to have.
Sure.
Okay, and then external.
External attacks come in, you can actually use it to isolate the IP addresses and drop out ranges of IP addresses in the process, so they don't, so if you think the Chinese army is doing it, which in reality, it's a replacement for resources. They have the resources. They don't need a replacement for resources. That's really what this is. It's a replacement. Instead of having 1,000 people do this, it's having one person do it. If you have all the resources you need, you probably don't need this.
So the caveat is one of the things that makes Burp so powerful is that it's contextual to the application. If you do something like run OpenBAS or ZAP against an endpoint, it's clearly detectable. At the end of one engagement, it was a 3-week engagement. I was doing mostly manual testing the entire engagement. And at the very end, I knew they had an IDS team. They hadn't been told what I was doing. And just for fun, I ran Nicto, which is like the noisiest tools out there. I intentionally ran an older version of it that's even noisier. For that engagement, I flew out to give the report out to a team. And while I was there, somebody said, "Hey, why don't you go like chat with the IDS team and like tell them what you found, and you guys can hang out for a while." And the first thing they said to me was, "Your version of Nicto's outdated," because their tool had told them right away. What's nice about, but they never noticed me testing with Burp.
Manual stuff,
Right. There is a lot of automation in here, but it's all contextual to the application. The only way Burp does anything is if it receives requests that are within context of the normal behavior of the application. So nothing about this looks malicious. Or the next 10 requests that I send, where I'm iterating through individual properties or structures and things like that. So, yeah, it's a good point.
Is there any reporting? Like a reporting feature?
I have seen auto-generated reports from the tool. That's a good question. So in the Pro version, if I remember correctly, let's see. Engagement tools. I do remember seeing something that would generate, oh no, I bet it was over here in the findings, these guys. So like cross-site scripting reflected, view, site confidence, report issue. Yeah. So for the automated findings, usually the low-hanging fruit, you can drop out an HTML encoded report. Typically, I will. Another thing that is handy when you're doing reports, even though it doesn't make them for you, in the history, I'm running out of screen real estate. You can copy the request a number of ways. So here you can actually copy the request as a curl command, which is really nice for repeatability. You can just copy the URL, you can copy it as a CSV, and then there are extensions that allow you to do things like copy them as Python requests. So you can just like drop that into Python. Excellent.
Thank you.